Welcome to INWED Talks, which are an initiative of the Women's Engineering Society that celebrate International Women in Engineering Day. INWED is the Women in Engineering Society's flagship global campaign that highlights the achievements and contributions of women engineers while inspiring future generation of women to pursue engineering careers. These INWED talks are a series of conversations exploring the INWED 25 theme of Together We Engineer through various lenses. And this INWED talk focuses on engineering across networks, examining how networks such as the Association for Black Engineers UK and Women's Engineering Society can collaborate across their networks to build an engineering industry that truly reflects the diversity of the society it serves. And by addressing key challenges from representation to leadership to funding, hopefully we'll examine how working together, our collaborative efforts can drive equity, inclusion and innovation in engineering, ensuring that the industry is equipped to grow and innovate as we know it must do. And to do this, I'm really delighted to welcome Dr. Nike Folayan, who is Technical Director at WSP and Co-CEO of the Association for Black Engineers UK, and Dr. Ollie Folayan, who is Head of Process at Costain Group and also Co-CEO of the Association of Black Engineers UK. And hopefully you two are going to share your perspectives on building your network and the crucial role of networks and working with others in shaping the future of industry. So hopefully by bringing together your voices, we can spark a bit of a meaningful conversation around ensuring how we're going to work together to build this inclusive and diverse engineering industry. So let's dive in. So welcome both. It'd be really lovely if you could briefly introduce yourselves. Maybe Nike, you'd like to go first.
Hello, thank you for that introduction. My name is Nike Folayan and I am, as you already mentioned, Technical Director at a company called WSP, where I work in transport and communication systems. I am also co-founder of AFBE, which is the Association for Black and Minority Ethnic Engineers UK, and I have a few other hats that I wear.
Oh, that's ridiculous. What else are you involved in? Just pause there to hear a little bit more about what other things you're involved in.
So I'm a trustee of Engineering UK currently, and I am a trustee at STEMET Futures. So it's an organisation that supports girls as well. Yeah.
So good, so good. We love STEMET at WES.
Yes.
Ollie.
Hello. I'm Ollie Folayan. I am Nike's brother, as what saying that. I'm also head of process, as you say, at Costain for the energy part of the business. When I'm not doing that, I'm a co-founder of AFBE, an organisation founded in 2007 to address underrepresentation of people within engineering, and I also teach at the University of Dundee when I'm not doing all of that and a number of other things.
Amazing, amazing. Definitely high performing teams there, Folayan family. Love that. So perhaps we can open with a sort of question around the theme for INWED this year. And just, can you perhaps talk about what the phrase Together We Engineer means to you and why networks like WES and AFBE are so vital to the future of engineering?
Ollie, did you want to go first? Oh, shall I go? Oh, so Together We Engineer for me is quite personal. I have a team of individuals across the world, so essentially based in the UK but also in India, and I've seen personally the importance of having diverse voices and diverse minds in the same space for an inclusive design. So I personally think that what it means for me is the difference that we can really make in the world of engineering is the foundation of all that difference is when we do things as a collective rather than the way that we've done them for many years, which is make assumptions around how other people might perceive a space that we design or a space that we build, or how other people should obviously come along with us because that's the way that we've done it for hundreds of years. You can tell I work in the rail industry. And so I've seen the difference it can make when we actually come together and work. And that's why it's really important. Organizations like WES and AFBE are really important because it brings those diverse views of how people experience the world and how people experience engineering. And it means that we can do better as a collective and make more things accessible to a wider range of people.
Yeah, that's it. It's getting those diverse opinions, isn't it, to spot new opportunities, and the sort of flip side of that, to really be able to recognize those risks that, you know, one set of people might be blindsided by. So that's brilliant. Thank you. Okay, Ollie, what about you?
Yes, when I think of that theme of Together We Engineer, I think of a process plant. And if you go to a process plant, you have all kinds of equipment, and you can look around, and every single detail is precise, and it's also there by a different discipline. So everything you're looking at, you know, the structural would design your platform. So you'll see lots of equipment and cables that maybe somebody like Nick would have produced, and the size of it is probably down to me as a process engineer. And if we think about the future, what is our product that we want to get at the end of this? We want a more equal and a cleaner world and future, and we want to develop the people who will be those inventors and innovators of the future. That's our product. So if we could draw from the analogy of something that actually comes quite naturally to us, which is that we recognize in our engineering projects the importance of different skills and different disciplines and abilities. Well, it's exactly the same thing that we need to produce the future that we have, and that is why it's so important. It's also the truth that you can look at the history of innovation, and every time we've needed to innovate, we have also included. So, you know, the Women's Engineering Society is the perfect example of that. And so that's what I think of when we think of Together We Engineer.
Amazing, amazing. So good that you've brought kind of like the traditional engineering principles together, but really recognizing that actually at the end of the day, it's about people. So
Yeah.
that's so good, so good. And if we can sort of draw on both your personal experiences here within the engineering industry, and obviously you're both now senior leaders within that industry, as well as running your not-for-profit, which is really amazing. What led you to establish AFBE? Were there personal experience that made you believe it was needed? Was there a particular moment that perhaps cemented your conviction, that meant that you came together to build this dedicated network?
This time it's your turn to go first.
Okay.
Never changes,
Well,
does it? This throwing your sibling under the bus.
No.
This is the story of my life. Anyway, so I've you know, we come from a family of engineers. Our dad was an engineer, and I decided when I was 9 years old that I was going to be a chemical engineer, not just any kind chemical engineer. And I won't tell you about the evil genius that inspired that thought. But you know,
That's
so
another recording.
And so all my life I've been sort of wanted to do this, but when I got into the sector, I sometimes found that in addition to the wonderful opportunity that is to take an idea from concept to detailed design, and to do it on so many different types of equipment and different types of industries, a thing I still enjoy. Alongside that was also an aspect of what the workplace culture was like. And, you know, culture wasn't always the most inclusive. And the sad reality say is that it was like that when I was starting. Unfortunately, still many of those kinds of stories today, you just get close to people and they tell you that there is a problem. And so we saw that there was this underrepresentation within our own context of our companies, but also within community. Living in Croydon at the time, there was a lot, particularly around serious youth violence affecting young Black boys. And at the time, it was quite typical to present athletes and R&B singers as the best example of excellence within our community. And we thought we may not be Jay-Z, but we are actually in a very exciting, exciting career. And
You
so
are
we
in
thought,
my eyes, Ollie.
thank you, thank you. My self-esteem has just gone higher. Anyway, we decided that one, there had to be mentors and people that we can find in other companies. So we reached out to try to create that community that we needed support in our careers. But also we saw that there was an opportunity to be mentors for younger people and to present a different image to younger people. And those are the thoughts that sparked the conversation between myself and Nika and AFBE.
Amazing. And Nikki, perhaps you can, I mean, that's very interesting. There's a lot of narrative around at the moment around boys and the role models that they have. Be really good to hear your take around this as a woman growing up in London.
Yes. So
You,
I always, as Ollie's already said, I come from a family of engineers. I always thought that engineering was cool because I had a cool brother and a cool dad that were already within the engineering space. And so I found it really odd when I realized that not many, it was kind of an odd thing to realize that, you know, I was a minority in the minority. And
yeah,
and that realization started off at uni and then getting into the workforce and realizing that I was in an office on a floor of about 100 to 150 or more men, and I was the only female engineer, and kind of thinking, oh, this is odd, but
yeah,
okay, we'll be fine. We're clever. We've done the work. We can do well. We're very outspoken, and realizing that that wasn't the case. And also kind of thinking half the time thinking, is it because of my gender or my ethnicity? That confusion of why am I being treated differently? Why am I being othered? What's really the cause of it? And then talking to Ollie, he had been in the industry for years before me, and find out that his experiences in
yeah,
that space, and starting to understand the intersectionality of gender and ethnicity, and how it actually starts to affect you within the workplace, how you are viewed, what projects you're assigned to, and so on. And so that sparked the conversation around what was going on. And I know Ollie's already mentioned what was happening in Croydon and London at the time. But another thing that happened at that time was the Prime Minister of the UK coming out and actually saying that, sort of saying that Black culture was responsible for the crime in London, when the reality was that his own department's report had shown that it had nothing to do with ethnicity. The fear of going into the office on the Monday, and someone saying, because that time it was in a, it's very different now. No one would do that now, but getting into the office and imagining someone walking up to me and saying, "Oh, did you see the news? What do you
yeah,
think?" Was a scary prospect. And so those are some of the experiences that I had. And to be honest, when I went to Ollie, I was hoping that he would say, "Oh, you know, I have had a different experience," and realize that horrifyingly, some of his experiences were actually worse than what I was experiencing.
yeah,
Was one of the catalysts for kind of thinking about starting AFBE, and then finding out that there was no one at the top that we could talk to that had, you know, because we were trying to do a comparison between our experiences and maybe people that had gone before us. Maybe we could learn how to manage the situations we were in, and find out there was no one,
yeah.
or very, very few, was shocking as well. And that's the reason why we have the pillars within AFBE, where we don't just consider the attraction piece and the retention piece, but we also consider the progression piece.
Yeah, no, so important. And I think the other thing that I want to pick up there, Nikkei, is around that thing. Quite often you hear with role modeling, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And I always challenge that, because I think, as you found, when you maybe had a look round, you were like, well, there aren't many role models. Maybe that needs to be me. And you've done, you two have done that. You've become the role models, even though there weren't many that you saw when you were coming up. You were like, well, it's just going to need to be me. And I always kind of push people into thinking like that. Don't hold yourself back because you can't see someone like you. Maybe you need to, someone has to go first, sort of thing. So it's amazing that you two have stood up there. And I love that you're still referring to him as your big brother. I think that's very that's lovely. I'm loving this.
I would call him a sister, but that would be odd, wouldn't it?
Right, well, that's again another like a bit of a spin-off podcast. We're just getting loads of episodes out of them. Good. So you touched on then, EK, about your pillars around empowering students and professionals to excel and thrive in their careers. And Nikkei, I'm not going to let you make Ollie go first on this one. I'm going to come to you first here, but what misconceptions about diversity in engineering did you first encounter when you were first advocating? So you've decided to create AFBE, but what misconceptions about diversity in engineering did you encounter when you were first advocating for AFBE's mission?
Oh no, thank you for that question. I think it was Ollie that describes it as it's like having bad breath. As soon as you say AFBE, like everyone runs away from you because they kind of think, what are you trying to do? Why are you trying to rock this boat? We're very comfortable in this boat. What are you trying to do? So the first thing that we found was going into these unusual environments where many a times you'll be the only person of color in a room, and then talking, trying to make friends, and then talking about AFB, and straight away that they were going to run as far away from you as possible. And then personally, what I did experience a lot of is every time I talked about diversity around ethnicity, someone said, oh, but as a woman. And I'm like, I'm both. It's really difficult for me to just talk about being a woman in this space without talking about the fact that I am a Black woman, and there are certain things that I experience that any other person may not experience as a result of being a woman. So that was the misconception around the intersectionality, and the importance of intersectionality in the conversation of diversity was important. And at the time, it was just there was a prevalence of just get on with it, just stop whining and whinging. You as a woman have chosen to work in this profession. This is how we are. It's all banter. Some shocking experiences that I've had in the office. Of people making a reference to body parts even in my presence, or going on site and seeing some on-sitely images on the wall, and and just being expected to accept it. Some of the experiences that we did have. And then the other thing that we did have a lot of is, I think Ollie describes it as affairs. We had lots of organizations that were having affairs with us, so they'd have conversations. They would have conversations.
That's just sunk in. I was like, tell me more about that.
So we'd have conversations with them in private, but they would never acknowledge us in public. They would have, they'd be happy to support us in private, but not in public, which was really hard. And I remember I used to kind of walk to the office. I worked in Liverpool Street, and I'd call Ollie and I'd whinge all the way from London Bridge to Liverpool Street, and he would say, oh, don't worry, this time will pass, and at some point someone will get it. But those experiences, they were really, really tough, because I could see what we could achieve, and not as a separate group, but as a community of, because what we always said in AFBE is that you cannot be inclusive by being exclusive. So everything we did, we included everybody regardless of ethnicity and gender. And so we found it really difficult when people didn't get the message was about engineering together. So yeah,
Yeah.
those were some of the
Yeah.
challenges that we experienced.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, a lot of people, you get this a lot, don't you? And we've heard it in the media. I don't want to bring us down too much, but we've heard it in the media where it's, you know, women of a certain age or the angry black woman. It's like, you know, you just want to say it's very easy to be angry when the system is stacked against you. Like,
That's right.
you know, if you're expecting me just to absorb everything, you know, and you do absorb a lot, don't you?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, I'm actually going to say something about this because it's not safe, or it's holding us back, or it means we're not attracting the right talent. So I am going to say something because surely you understand this barrier.
Yeah.
And then you get this reputation of being a noisy employee,
That's
or
right.
and actually what we need is the people at the top to stand up and say, we need to do something about this.
That's
And
right.
then everyone thinks it's a good idea, but we'll run. So it's just such a, you know, I'm so sorry that's been your experience. It has been the experience of many women and many people of color, and you know, it's great that, you know, people can see you guys and your organization hopefully feel some sense of belonging and some empowerment to change things. But Ollie, did you want to come in there?
Yeah. I mean, certainly there was that sense, and I think there was that sense that either that they didn't think it was an issue, or that they didn't think it was as big an issue as other things. And so some of the more surprising experiences would be people who were supposedly themselves diversity champions,
Yeah.
who would then, there was somebody who almost literally said, wouldn't it be great if you lot just kind of quietened down a little bit, and let's get the gender message out. And
Yeah.
a question I used to ask is, who are you thinking of when you're thinking of a woman? Because the term woman is not a monolith. It's made up of different people, people with lower social class, people who are disabled, people of color, you know, just a wide spectrum. And can you then practically get to your gender targets, or gender objectives, without this intersectional approach that
Yeah.
considers in various communities what the barriers might be. The barriers to entry for a Muslim woman of color are going to be very different to somebody who is perhaps a middle class white woman, and it's that sort of broadening of the thinking that started to change things. And you know, that is one of the more sort of positive things that we've seen in the industry, is that over time there has been an evolution in the way that people think and talk about these issues. And it's been very encouraging to hear some very senior leaders within the sector who have not been afraid to speak up. And, you know, and we are living at a time when DEI is again becoming a bit of a bad word in certain circles. And you know, I remember attending a leadership conference, you know, within my company, and a very senior leader saying that you know, we are not going to stop our commitment, or we're
No.
not going to push
Yeah.
back on our commitment to DEI. And I remember it was a whole day conference, and that was the only time there was an overall round of applause, that everyone
Right.
seemed to understand that this is important.
Oh yeah, amazing stuff. And that's probably because people just, you know, do want to work in an environment where their voice is heard, you know,
Yeah.
whoever you are.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. That's so good. And I have to say, you know, whether you call it ED&I, I mean, my background, anyone who's worked with me will know that when I'm working on strategy and things, I will say the words operating model 1,000 times. And I think, you know, for me, it is about baking EDI into every element of your operating model to make it
Embedding.
work, you know.
Mm.
So if and the other thing I quite often get side eyes or, you know, pulled up on us is when I say, well, actually, it will really hit people when they realize they can't access the talent, you know, for the growth and innovation that they need to meet their business goals. And I think when you start to talk about like that, they're like, oh yes, actually that does affect me. And for some people, they're like, oh, it doesn't affect me. And then you have to go, well, on you go. Let's see how your business does.
That's right. That's right.
You know, which is a sort of a little bit, you know, tongue in cheek. But ultimately, I do genuinely think that, you know, markets will decide. And I think people, you know, if they want to be successful, will be looking at how they make their workplace inclusive so that they attract talent and they retain it.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's something I often sort of draw a parallel between what happened with certain businesses, the blockbuster effect or HMV effect, in the sense that for a very long time these were very well-known businesses. Everyone went to their local blockbuster or the local or the HMV store, but over time these businesses did not in fact historically they had an opportunity to buy Netflix and didn't, and turned down the opportunity. And they ceased to evolve, and the real kind of evolution that's happening is expectations of people, and you won't get the best people if you don't have an environment that is inclusive. It is as simple as that, and businesses that don't pay attention to that will eventually find that that they face the consequences and disadvantages of that.
That's it. They won't see those risks coming. They won't identify those opportunities. I think that's exactly right. So just want to sort of shift the conversation a little bit now on how we can work together as networks to create change. So although our organisations have different focuses, we do intersect obviously on representation, talent development, and retention for business. And we've got a really clear, congruent goal in ensuring, I guess, essentially, if you want to talk about it in business terms, that we can address the skills gap that exists in engineering. And so I know we're just sort of dipping our toe in the water at the moment with collaboration, but what value do you see in perhaps cross network collaboration? Because there's lots of peers in the world out there who are doing similar brilliant work. How do you see perhaps us coming together to work a bit more closely?
Yeah. So I think that there is this need for every group to see what they do in the context of the bigger picture. And I think it's that understanding that means that we start to see other groups as collaborators, not competitors. I was at an event earlier in the year when it was the group of networks who were with a very well-known business who also happened to fund a lot of initiatives. And I remember introducing myself to somebody and telling them about what our organization does. And there was this, he suddenly sort of launched into this monologue about how problematic it was that you've got these many networks, and isn't there, you know, and it was very clearly saying that he was viewing us, without knowing much about us, was already viewing us through the prism of you're a potential obstacle to the objectives that I'm trying to achieve. And so I think it's that change in mindset. First of all, a look at the bigger picture that's important, but that change in mindset as to how we actually get to this end of what we're trying to achieve. We want a society that is fairer and cleaner. We want an industry that better reflects our communities and society, and quite a lot of groups who are invested in this space are doing so because they come from those communities, understand the issues that affect those communities, and are driven by some of the and for the most part driven by the right things. So there is an element of trust that needs to be had, and I think steps that people's leaders like you have taken, Susan, where you sort of reached out to us and reached out to other leaders to say, how do we work together? It's that kind of mindset that is important. So leaders are a really important part of this, of ensuring that we, one, understand the bigger picture. And then there's also a space for what I'll call coalition. So a big problem that organizations have quite often will be funding to do the things that they do. You've already mentioned that both Nika and I, for example, have a day job, and the only way we've been able to expand has been, and we wouldn't want to change that. We love being engineers, but the only way we've been able to expand that has been by being able to hire people who can then do this, and that requires funding. Can there be a more structured way in which this is all thought about, so that you can't support every initiative, but look at who the sort of who's doing work that is, hopefully has demonstrable impact, and is there a way that we can all kind of come together and just ensure that there is a funding model that ensures that organizations, I would like AFBE to have the kind of longevity, for example, that WES has had for been around for over 100 years. I would wish that there was a world in which initiatives like ours are no longer necessary, but the more sort of realistic part of me knows that sadly for a long time social justice will still be an issue. So it's about seeing the bigger picture. It's about identifying these projects that we can do together and seeing how we can amplify each other's voices.
I think that's right. Nika, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think Ollie's covered it quite well. I think
Yeah, and I think we've a little bit started to do that, haven't we, Ollie? Like making each other aware of what we're doing.
Yes.
And things like when we did our event in so we were sort of trying to grow our network more strongly in the regions, to take WES to place, because we know that women, more so than any other, just because of societal constructs, are more likely to be typed to play. So if we're showcasing opportunities to get involved in engineering at every kind of milestone of the journey, we're going to need to go to places and connect people in place. And I think when we did that first in Aberdeen, I was like, come along with us. Obviously that was on your in your hometown, so it's doubly special. But I think looking for those opportunities, sharing the opportunities, and then looking for the ones where we can go together, just means we can free up resources to do different work, doesn't it? So I'm here for that in spades.
Indeed.
I think that funding piece, quite often, as you say, you get partners come and they're like, actually, we're changing our focus from gender to race. And it's like, that's great. I mean, obviously we do still need to bring in funding, but it's sort of out of our control, and actually the congruent goals are good for us. So we're not a business. We don't need to make a profit. We just need to sort of get by and make sure our work gets out there. But I think definitely working together is going to be a really great opportunity for us. So I'm so pleased that we're
Indeed.
I want to be cynical and say organizations really need to again think about things holistically. I am always concerned when I went to years and years ago. I went to an event. I was asked to speak at an event, and someone said, and at the end I was really impressed with how everything went, and I walked up to this person and I said, it's really, because at the time EDI wasn't much of a thing, and I said, oh, it's really fantastic that you're bringing this platform together to talk about diversity. And he went like, oh, we're just talking about gender diversity just now. And I think once you say things like that, you've kind of lost, you've missed an opportunity there. So I almost think that organizations that kind of do that, oh yeah, no, we're working on this now, we're working on that now, have actually missed the point. And I think that if as a collective we're telling them that look, you can't just say you're working on ethnicity, or you can't just say you're working on this disability, because some organizations say, and then the more common one that people use as an excuse, oh, we're working on neurodiversity now, so everything else needs to park.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a lack of understanding of what inclusion actually means, and it requires all these bits to come together. So the more that we collaborate and the more that we share the same sort of ethos and message, and I'm talking about organizations that have a made impact, because I am controversially and well aware of there are many organizations also which causes some organizations to decide to step away, that are just they're there and they have the voices and stuff, but they are not really measuring or making the impact, and it's all about just making enough noise,
Yeah.
which causes many organizations to say, well, actually we spend such and such on this, and we haven't seen the impact, then we're not going to do this further. I think Ollie wrote an article recently, which I think I've read 3 times now, talking about this sort of a thing around the reasons why sometimes companies justify their need to focus on X and Y, or even not focus on EDI at all, because there are lots of things that are happening, and there's sometimes no basis for those products, and then there are no outcomes, there are no evident outcomes of those products, apart from everyone goes away feeling good that they've done something. So
Yeah. I mean, there was a program that a few of us got together. It was a Scottish program, a Scottish funded program, some years ago, where the National Manufacturing Institute of Scotland brought together. It was all a scheme to help the just transition, help people who maybe have spent most of their career working in the offshore environment, and are thinking of, what comes next as this industry contracts. And the program was that the government would pay for about 6 months of a person's kind of internship, and after that, they've got a choice. The company may decide to keep that person, or even if they don't, this individual has 6 months experience in a new sector. That's going to be another string to their bow. And we were able to get together. There's an organization called Equate Scotland, who are very much a STEM focused and gender focused program, and we partnered together, and we provided some of the program for the employers and the potential employees, and we didn't duplicate whatever Equate was doing, and they were providing a similar thing. And the impact of that was that we took a large number of people through a very important a program, and it's a good example of how we can find out where our stories intersect and where our strategies intersect, and see how do we work together to just make a much bigger impact.
No, that's amazing. That sounds fantastic. And I think, Nika, I love someone coming with a contrarian view, and I think you're absolutely right there to sort of call that out around being a bit suspicious when people say, oh, we're not, we're sort of maintaining the minority groups as separate pieces. And I'm going to say, it comes back to that operating model. Every element of your operating model needs to consider, if you wanted to go down to minorities, every employee is a minority of one, and they've all got different needs. And so if you're looking at inclusion holistically across your operating model, you are going to create an inclusive culture that doesn't that caters for individuals, which we all are. Like you say, I think you said at the top of the session, Ollie, not women aren't one monolith. And that is such a good thing to point out, because I think we've been there, haven't we, Nico, where people are like, oh, what do you this woman's having what do you think Nico as a woman? You're like, I don't know this woman, so I can't I can't speak on behalf of my people.
That's right. I've been in a meeting where someone had said something really not very nice to another woman in the meeting, and she broke down in tears, and all the men just glared at me like, sort it.
Do it.
And I'm like, I didn't cause it. I wasn't the one that said the mean, horrible thing.
I know. Yeah, but you're probably the one that's seeing what's going on though,
That's
probably.
right.
That's the truth of it.
That's right. That's right.
Good stuff. So I want to kind of draw us round now to talk about the future of AFBE and the engineering industry. What's your vision for AFBE in the next 5 years?
That's a really good question. And we
Well,
were
now. Visioning session.
we were asked that by it reminds me of our first conversation with Mission 44 a few years ago, which is Lewis Hamilton's charity on motorsport. And at the time, what we said is we would like to we want to be a big organization that remains small. So there a number of organizations we've actually drawn inspiration from. I've spent a bit of time looking at Wes, and not just because you're here. This is even before we met, looking at the evolution. But I've also looked at, if you take every city in this country has a local parish and also part of a bigger sort of church or system. We want to be a big organization that remains small. That means having small hubs all around the country that do the kind of things that we have been doing for years in London and in Aberdeen. If it was possible to do a kind of heat map to say where has AFBE been most impactful, the likelihood is you would say that London and Aberdeen, and there's an obvious reason. Nick has been in London, I've been living in Aberdeen. But what we decided is if we are truly going to make a long-term impact, we can't be everywhere. And actually, success means that it's not entirely dependent on us being everywhere. So what we want to do is replicate what we've learned, and do that in small communities all over the country, meeting the needs of those communities. And key to that strategy, and something we've been discussing for a while, is collaboration. Is working with similar people with similar objectives in that local area that ensures that people who hadn't thought of themselves as people who could be engineers suddenly think, oh, maybe this is something as interesting. We've had kids talking about having engineering as what one young guy in our hub in Edinburgh said, I would like to do music, but maybe have engineering on the side. I thought, wow, engineering as a side hustle. Who would have thought?
Love that.
But why not? Why not? And so we'd like to see that. We'd like people who are going into work to feel that there is a community they can come to when things are hard, to feel that there is a place they can reach out to for mentors who can help them through. We'd like to see more of the people who have the aspiration to do so becoming leaders, and that can happen in all of these small units all over the country. So that's the way I see our future.
Great stuff. Nike, did you want to add anything?
I just wanted to add about representation. We still have the big issue around the number of students graduating with engineering degrees and the numbers getting into the workforce from a diverse background. I'd like to see that representation in the workforce. I know it's gotten better over the years with the entry levels slightly increasing, but I think we could do a lot better. And then at the leadership level, we still have the case that I probably know all the people of color who are leaders within the engineering space. I'd like to get to a point that I don't know at least 50% of them, because there's so many of them that are excelling and doing really well. I always say this, that engineering isn't new for our community, so why don't we have the leaders at the top? So that's what I'd like to see for the engineering space, that it isn't, oh, you're technical director, oh my goodness, oh, and you're a woman too, and you're black, oh wow, amazing. I'd like to be, well, the minimum, and I'd like to see us actually as a community continue to grow in the space and excel, not just because we are from ethnic minority backgrounds or global majority, as you'd like to call them, but because we are being excellent as the work we do. I and Ollie long time ago chose that we would stay within the engineering profession, because we thought it was important to show that it isn't wanting inclusion and diversity isn't mutually exclusive to technical
Yeah.
knowledge and expertise. So
Yes.
we'd want to see more of that, and we want to see more of people from similar backgrounds actually not hiding under the radar because they want to get to the top, but advocating for inclusion for all.
Indeed,
No.
indeed. I'm always surprised the number of people who are surprised when they find that we actually work as engineers, because they think that with all of the stuff that happens with AFBE that we're probably full-on activists and not
Yeah.
actually working within the sector. So absolutely.
I know, it's so amazing, and I do tell everyone that way. You know, when I'm speaking about you, I do highlight the fact that you are both practicing engineers, because I think that's such a massive draw, you know, such an advantage for you, for your organisation, to bring that currency to the role of AFBE. So I think that's and that's something I don't have. I have stepped out, and also I knew this was going to be brought up. Thanks, guys. I'm not an engineer.
There's no discrimination here. No discrimination.
We're inclusive.
I have worked in engineering for a very long time. I always add that bit on the end. But there's normally engineers are a lovely bunch, and I am monolithing everyone here. But I do, whenever I stand up and I say I'm not an engineer, there's normally some sort of ooh.
Not with us. Not with us.
Not with us. Sorry.
No, that's brilliant. And Nico, really interesting point you bring up there around the university numbers. And there's another INWED talk that I do with Judith Abole from Robert Gordon University and Johnny Rich from the Engineering Professors Council, where some really great points come up about the state of engineering courses, the prospects, the future, the current issues. So do have a listen to that one if you have time, which I'm imagining neither of you do, because you're
it's interesting, it's important.
Definitely have time.
Yeah, amazing. One last quick fire question to finish with. What would you and Nika, I think you've already said this, maybe you've answered this just in your last answer, but what would you like your one, if you had to pick one thing, your lasting impact on engineering to be? And I think Nika, you said there you'd like to not know everyone at all the other engineers who've made it to leadership positions who are Black women. You'd like to not just know everyone, because there are many more of them. So, but would that be your one lasting impact on engineering, or would there be something else?
To be honest, that I'd like to see our industry actually move from what I consider to be a lot of performative allyship to real allyship, because then that will mean that we can grow as a community together and everyone recognizing everyone's skills and talent. At the moment, it's still, people are still quite surprised when women say I'm an engineer. There's still that, oh, you're an engineer, and especially if you're a woman of color as well. So I'd like to get to a point where it's so normal, it's so natural that it's not even, it's not, there's no argument there. And I'd like to be in less interruptee meetings. Interruptee is a word I made up a few years ago.
One that
that's the lasting impact.
Yeah, brilliant. Ollie, what about you?
Yeah, I mean that last one is a deep one, actually. Interruptee meetings. It's all about getting your voice heard. I mean, personally, certainly I'd like to, just like Nika said, actually, get to a point where engineers in leadership, engineers making an impact, a technical impact, isn't remarkable. So it comes to a point where it's just what we do.
Yeah, no, brilliant note to end on. And you are both remarkable, so sorry for that. You are. But thank you so much. I've really loved this conversation. It's been such a pleasure to speak to you both. I'm really, really grateful that you've given us time and I'm really looking forward to continuing to work with you going forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank
Susan.
you.
Thank you for
Thank
inviting
you.
us. And
You've been an amazing host as well.
yes, yes, and I'm excited about the. We've known Wes for a while, so I think I mentioned to you last time. I'm really excited about the prospect. It just looks really exciting for the future of Wes as well.
Amazing. Thanks, Ollie.